That's Papa's on the Housetop by Leroy Carr, the great blues pianist who wrote a whole bunch of classic songs. And this particular arrangement was taught to me by the great Geoff Bartley. You can hear it on his album, Hear That Wind Howl, a great collection of blues and folk songs. And Geoff taught me this years ago in a lesson. It's a really cool arrangement of what otherwise is a fairly simple tune. It's only 8 measures long. It's short and repetitive, but Geoff's arrangement of it gives us this really engaging and fun to play fingerstyle version. So it takes something simple and brings it to another level, in my opinion. There's a tab in the video description that you can download from my website, and I'm going to walk us through that tab. We're going to learn all the fundamentals and make this one nice and straightforward and simple for you to learn. As we come to the first measure, we're going to fret the 2nd fret of the A string with our middle finger, the 2nd fret of the G string with our index finger, and with our picking hand, we're going to pinch those 2 notes with the thumb and index finger. So that should sound like that. The next thing we're going to do, you can see my index fingers kind of hovering here around the 1st fret, and I'm going to drop that down onto the G string. My thumb is going to move down a string from where it just was. The index finger stays on the string that it had just picked, so now I'm going to be pinching the D and the G string. The D string is open there, so I only am fretting that 1st fret note. That gives me the first 2 beats. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my middle finger to the 2nd fret of the low E string. I'm going to bring my pinky to the 4th fret of the D string. That might be a little bit of a stretch for some people's fingers, so if that feels too difficult, another option is you could use your index and your ring finger, or your index and your pinky finger. The reason I like to use the middle and the pinky finger is now I've basically got my fingers each assigned to one of the first 4 frets, and I can just play it using those fingers, except in the cases like where we started, and I have 2 fingers stacked onto the same fret. I often tell students to experiment with fingerings. There's usually more than one way that might work well to finger a passage, so trying out some of those different options can be good. As soon as you know what way works best for you, what way feels the best, commit to doing it that way every time. It'll make practice so much easier. But working through fingerings with a sense of flexibility can be a good exercise and show you that there's different options that might work well. Now we have the first 3 beats of measure 1. Each of those beats is a pinch. On beat 1, we're pinching the A and the G string, strings 5 and 3. On beat 2, we're pinching the D and the G string, strings 4 and 3. And on beat 3, we're pinching the low E and the D string, strings 6 and 4. On that 3rd beat, we're going to play the first 8th note of the song, which is that the index finger is going to travel back to the 1st fret of the G string, and we're going to pick that note all by itself with the index finger. So now we have 1, 2, 3, and... The 4th beat is that we're going to play the D string open, which now gives us the first measure. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. A little bit slower. As I often recommend, it's good to play just the thumb and put your listening attention on the bass line so that when you add the rest of it in, you can hear that bass line in there. Nice and clear. If you can go back and forth like that without breaking flow, it's really going to enhance your rhythmic playing of the song and your ability to control the 2 parts, both separately and together. So now as we get to the 2nd measure, we're going to continue to kind of build off that theme a little bit, except there's going to be some rhythmic changes. We're going to play the 1st beat exactly the same as we did in measure 1, but then on the and of that 1st beat, we're going to play the 1st fret of the G string, and then the thumb comes down for the 2nd beat on the open D string, so that would give us 1 and 2, and then the pinky is going to play the 4th fret of the D string. You notice there though with my picking hand, because that was the and of 2, the and beat there, I picked that note with my index finger. So now we have a 1 and 2 and to start this measure. 1 and 2 and. And you notice there too, the other funny thing is on that D string I played thumb and then index. So if you're not used to doing that, it might be good to just get a little bit of a feel for that bouncy feeling of the thumb followed by the index finger on that string. Okay, my next two beats are going to be just bass notes. I'm going to bring, you can see my middle finger kind of waiting there to just drop down onto the second fret of the low E string. And then the final note of that measure is going to be my thumb playing the A string open. All right, now we have the second measure. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. And now we have the first two measures. A little bit slower. Measure 3, we're just going to repeat measure 1 again. Measure 4, we're almost going to repeat measure 2 again. Up to that point, it's exactly the same, so that gave me again 1 and 2 and 3. But then for the fourth beat this time, rather than playing the open A string, I'm going to play the first fret of the low E string. And it's going to be a little hard to see this because in a moment as we get to measure 5, our fretting hand's going to jump up the neck for what it's going to fret next. But the bass line here is actually just going like this. We're just walking down from that F sharp on the second fret of the low E, F to the low E open. So just good to recognize that's what the bass line is doing there. As we come to measure 5, and that low E string is our new bass note, with our fretting hand, what we're going to do is we're going to fret the 7th fret of the G string with the ring finger and the 6th fret of the D string with the index finger. And we're going to pinch the 6th, the 4th, and the 3rd string, the E, the D, and the G. And that's going to sound like that. Okay, then take those two fingers, just move them back a fret to fret 5 and 6. But this time, the thumb is dropping down to play its bass note on the D string, which means our picking hand is going to pinch the D and the G, the 4th and 3rd string. Okay, that gives us the first two beats of measure 5. So we have a 3-fingered pinch there to start off, and then a 2-fingered pinch. From there, we're going to fret the 9th fret of the D string with the pinky, and the 7th fret of the low E string with the index finger, which is a little funny because earlier in this finger formation, when we were on the 2nd and 4th fret, I was using the middle finger there, but we'll see why I chose to change fingers here in a moment. There's definitely some funny fingering things that go on throughout this song, but it's kind of what makes it cool at the same time. So now we have those three beats. We're kind of mimicking the first measure, but we're on a new chord here. We're on basically E7. From there, we're going back to where we just were. The 5th fret of the D string with the index finger, the 6th fret of the G string with the ring finger. If you can land both fingers at once, that's ideal, but if we have to prioritize a finger, it should be the ring finger, because that's going to be sounded on the and beat, and then the thumb is going to come down and pick the bass note. So what we have there rhythmically would be 1, 2, 3, and 4. The thumb comes down and it's playing that D string 5th fret note. That's our final bass note of that measure. The other thing that's tricky about this part is what the picking hand is doing, because when we get to that 3rd beat and we do that pinch of strings 6 and 4 with the thumb and index finger, our index finger just picked that note. So to get the 8th note, I find it easier for my middle finger to pick that 6th fret note of G that's coming on the and of 3. 1, 2, 3, and. So I pick that note with my middle finger, and then my thumb comes down because that's a bass note on the 4th beat there. I want my thumb to always be playing those quarter notes in the bass. So another kind of funny little thing in there, this song has a lot of tongue twisters, whether it's some of the fingerings we're doing with our fretting hand or some of the picking maneuvers that we're doing with this hand. So these things have worked really well for me in my playing of the song, but like I said, experiment a little bit. Don't take my word as the end all. You might find some other creative options that work well for you in your playing of it. Measure 6 is going to echo measure 5, but with some changes. We're going to start in the same place. We're doing that 3-fingered pinch again, the low E, the D, and the G string, the thumb, index, and middle doing that pinch. And on the fretting hand, we have the ring finger back on fret 7 of G, index finger on fret 6 of D. And after we play that pinch, we're going to take those same 2 fretting fingers like we did before, move them back a half step so that the same 2 fingers are on fret 6 and 5 of the D and G string now. But this time what's going to happen is we're going to grab that G string note on the and of 1. So that gives me 1 and 2 is my thumb coming down and playing that bass note, the 5th fret of the D string. 1 and 2. Next, we're going to return to another fingering that we used in the last measure. We're going to have the pinky on the 9th fret of D and the index finger on the 7th fret of the low E string. But this time the rhythmic delivery is going to change. So if we take what we just played, that was again 1 and 2 and 3. So I picked that D string note on the and of 2, and then my thumb came down and played that bass note, 7th fret of low E string, on the downbeat, the 3rd beat. 1 and 2 and 3. These rhythms are part of what makes this so fun to play, but they're tricky at first, so as I always recommend, go nice and slow. Even slower than that if you need to. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit of a glimpse into why I chose to change fingers. I mentioned this a little bit ago, why I'm using the index finger on that bass note rather than the middle, which would have mirrored what I had done earlier when we were starting out down the neck a bit. And the reason for that is because the next thing we're going to do to finish off this measure is we're going to play the 8th fret of the A string, and that's going to then lead us into the 9th fret of the A string. Before we figure out where that 9th fret note is leading us, let's just play measure 6 by itself. So I'm ending there with my middle finger on the 8th fret of A. That's again giving us 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Very dissonant measure when you play it by itself like that, because that 8th fret note, it's just walking us up. We saw a little walk down earlier in the song, F sharp walking down to E, and now we're walking from F into F sharp. That's that 9th fret note, and you can see my fingers are getting into a chord formation here. So you might know the C7 shape, which is basically a C chord, and you're adding your pinky to the 3rd fret of the G string. If you take that finger formation and you move it up all the way to the 7th, 8th, and 9th fret, that's going to give you an F sharp 7 chord. So there's our F sharp 7. Now, when you come into that from this, land your ring finger. That gives you a moment to get those other fingers in place. Like I said earlier, if you can get everybody there at the same time, great. But if we have to prioritize a finger, it's going to be that ring finger playing the bass note of that F sharp 7 chord. Our other fingers can get a moment to catch up. If this is a new chord to you, another thing I always recommend is doing a lot of this. Play the chord, get your fingers all confused about where they just were. This is a really nice way to get a whole bunch of repetitions and help you memorize the chord, also get your fingers there faster. Really expedited way, because if you think of it in terms of playing the song, you're only going to get to that chord once through the song every time. So that doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to practice that fingering, whereas if you do that exercise for a minute or two, now you've practiced that chord fingering maybe 20 times or so, and that's going to make it so much easier the next time it comes up in the flow of the song. So you play that bass note, ring finger, 9th fret of the A string, the thumb picking there, and then we finish that chord formation. The thumb drops down to the D string because this is the 2nd beat, so that means we're playing a bass note. And then my index and my middle finger are picking the G and the B string respectively. So that gives me 1, 2. 1, 2. Okay, now my ring finger, it's going to move up to the 9th fret of the low E string, and I'm going to play that as the 3rd beat. 1, 2, 3. Then on the and of 3, my index picks the note that I'm already fretting on the G string. 1, 2, 3, and. Okay, the 4th beat is that my thumb just alternates back down to the D string, and I'm already fretting that note as well from the chord formation. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Maybe a good opportunity to check back in with that. Could do that on the earlier measures as well. We're going to take a trip back down the neck here, and we're going to begin by fretting the 2nd fret of the high E string and then the 3rd fret of the B string, using the index and the middle finger to fret those notes. And with the picking hand, here I'm using my index and middle finger to pick these notes, and I'm going to pinch them twice in a row like that. And I'm only bending, you could tell I'm bending a string over there. I'm only trying to bend the B string. So my high E string note on the 2nd fret, I'm trying to keep that stationary, and I'm just doing a slight bend of that 3rd fret of the B string. And that just gives us that nice bluesy tension. We're not bending it too far, just enough to get it slightly out of tune and kind of growling a little bit. Next, my ring finger is going to fret the 4th fret of the G string, and my thumb is going to come all the way down to the G string to pick that note. But before I do, I'm also going to fret the 2nd fret of G with the index finger, because after I pick the 4th fret note, I'm going to pull off to that 2nd fret note. So that gives me now 1, 2, 3, and. After that ring finger does the pull off, it can be on its way up to the 4th fret of the D string. The thumb can follow it. That's beat 4. That's the and of 4, the open B string. I picked that with my index finger. That gives us the 8th and final measure now. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Now that last note being the open B string, that gives us just a little breathing room to think slightly ahead and get our middle and ring finger ready to fret those 2nd fret notes that we began measure 1 with. And we're into our next repetition of the tune. And that gets you everything you heard at the beginning of the video, this great little Geoff Bartley arrangement of the Leroy Carr classic Papa's on the Housetop. It has some tricky fingerings and rhythms in it, so take it nice and slow, but I think you'll find it really rewarding and fun to play in the long run. If you do, please send me a video. I'd love to hear you playing it. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be back soon with another song for you.